Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to Tag Tuesday. I have another tag for you this Tuesday. This is called the Reading Taste Tag. I was tagged by Kazen over at Always Doing. I'll leave a link to her excellent video and channel down below. I believe the original, she said, was done by a channel called Sophie's Thoughts, and I'll leave a link to that original video down below as well. This is essentially a question or a tag asking about, as the name implies, your reading taste. And I thought there were some kind of interesting questions here, and some of these things I think I've answered on my channel before, but I don't think I've ever put them together in one place, so here we go. Question number one is, what's your favorite genre? And this is probably the question I'll spend the most time on, I think, because no matter how I talk about this, I don't think it can come out but sounding anything other than snobby, and that's not my intention. One kind of book, one kind of reading experience is not more valuable than another. There's just what we like and what we don't like. So what I usually say is, when people ask me what my favorite genre is, my temptation is just to say general fiction, because that is actually the description I like best. But that's a description that's kind of gone out, and I think a description that we see more often, particularly here on BookTube, is to call it literary fiction. I'm not sure that all the fiction I read aspires to literature, so I prefer the term general fiction. It's not that I don't read genre fiction, I do. And if I were to, list my favorite genres, general fiction would be number one, nonfiction, history would be number two, probably detective stories, mysteries would be number three, and maybe fantasy would be number four. I read in other genres, and I really like to read nonfiction, but my absolute favorite then is just general fiction. And what I like about general fiction is this: you can get anything in general fiction. You can get historical stuff mixed in. You can get magical elements. You can get fantasy elements mixed in. You can have a piece of general fiction which has elements of a mystery. And to me, that means it's the most versatile, and it allows me to read the most versatilely, and there's not a formula, there's not a form, there's not necessarily a set of tropes that general fiction has to follow. It can be anything. And as much as I like detective fiction and mysteries, they follow a basic pattern. Crimes are committed, some kind of a detective or policeman shows up, works out the clues, more crimes are committed, eventually crime is solved, probably in 92% of them, and that's the way it goes. And I enjoy that as much as the next person, but there are then limits that come from genre fiction that I don't think they're there in general fiction. So now that I've possibly made everybody mad, I'll move on to question two. What's the most difficult genre for you to read? And I would say that's a genre that I really don't read at all, and that's self-help. This is probably where my wife and I's reading tastes vary the most. I would call anything that attempts to teach you how to do something better self-help. If it tries to teach you how to be a better teacher, it's self-help. It tries to teach you how to be a better business manager, it's self-help. It tries to teach you how to be a better writer, it's self-help. And I have read some books on writing. If it tries to teach you how to be a better human being, it's self-help. And while I think there is a value in self-help books, and I certainly wouldn't run those down to anybody else, I do also think there's, and forgive me for being a cynical old man, kind of a racket with a lot of these books where somebody comes up with some kind of clever concept like, we're all pirates, we're all on the same bus, we're all a certain type of an animal, and then they kind of talk about all the ways in which you can appeal to those different people and be... Anyway, I really don't enjoy those kinds of books. They have a tendency to be hardback books, somewhere around 150 pages with short blocks of text and big gaps in between them, and something about my cheap soul just says this is a ripoff. They could have, printed a book that was 35 pages long and probably saved me some money and perhaps some time and made it a paperback. Anyway, self-help, that would be the hardest books for me to read. Question three is the most curious, and that is the preferred age range, and I would say adults. I like to read books written by adults, about adults, featuring adults that are intended for adults. Now, I do read some books that have children in them who carry part of the storytelling. I'm thinking of Valeria Luiselli's Lost Children Archive. Has two children that carry part of the story, and that doesn't bother me, but If we're just thinking, along the lines of, do I prefer, books for adults or middle grade books or YA books, I would say adult fiction. In part because I think that I'm probably a little too old for YA. That just feels odd to me. And I did read a John Green book this year as a part of my effort to read kind of outside my comfort zone, or to read books in genres I don't usually read. I did read a John Green book. I found it to be mostly entertaining, but definitely not a book that was meant for me. If you find yourself in a YA book saying to yourself, well, all you had to do is this and that wouldn't have happened, then you're probably too old for a YA book. Question number 4 is character or plot. Which one is most important to you? And I'm going to say character. I did a survey on this on that kind of like public function on my channel about this earlier this year, and character is most important to me. Writing is probably second, and plot is third. I don't really mind reading a book in which very little happens as long as the characters are engaging and I care about them and the writing is good. That's really what I look for, but to me character is more important than plot. And going back to question number 1, when I want to read something that's plot driven, I generally speaking choose to read genre fiction because it is plot driven. But I also prefer kind of detective stories and mystery stories in which the detective is a recurring character and you get to know that character, and therefore character is important there as well. By the way, when I say, and I think I might have said this, when I say that I like to care about the characters, that doesn't mean I necessarily have to like them. It doesn't mean I necessarily have to want them to be successful. It just means I have to care what happens. I have to be engaged enough in kind of that fictional character creation to be interested in what happens to them and to, in that sense, care what happens. I think a lot of times when people say, they need to care about characters, people interpret that as meaning they need to like the characters. They don't. I'll give you an example. Wuthering Heights is an example of a book that I don't like because I didn't care about any of the characters. Now, those characters were to me all unlikable, but what really was the issue for me with Wuthering Heights was that none of them were particularly interesting to me. I didn't find Heathcliff to be interesting or mysterious. I just found him to be, a cruel ass. And that's not something that is going to make me care about the outcome of the book. Question number 5 is preferred perspective. I don't really have one. I would say I think second person is the hardest to pull off. And there is a certain comfort to reading something that's written from a third person perspective, whether that narrator or character is omniscient or not. Prompt number 6, preferred tense, past. Writing in the future tense feels impossible to me. Writing in the present tense almost always involves some use of the past tense, so for the most part I think writing is done properly in the past tense. Prompt number 7 is, do you prefer series or standalone books? And I would say I prefer standalone books because I like to have a complete story. Now, having said that, there are pieces of series fiction that I've read and loved. The Lord of the Rings. I'm 2/3 the way through the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, and I'm looking forward to reading the third. I've read all the Patrick O'Brian novels featuring Captain Jack Aubrey and Stephen Maturin, and there are 21 of those books. I don't mind books being in a series as long as each book is a standalone thing. Now, they can contribute to an overall bigger plot, but each book has to have a beginning and an end. They have to have events which are kind of the climax of that book. To give you an idea with Lord of the Rings, the climax of that book is when Gandalf is killed by the Balrog, or maybe, if you want to go, when the Fellowship actually breaks up. After that, and then with the Two Towers, the climax of the book is the victory at Helm's Deep, and so on. But each one of those books kind of stands alone, and that's fine. I don't mind books in series that way, but I don't want necessarily read a book in which I'm thinking, oh, now I have to read the next 200 or 300 page book because I won't know what happens, and I'm not. There's been no resolution. Question number 8 is, do you prefer long books or short books? And I would say it depends. If the book is good, it doesn't matter to me how long it is. Obviously I don't think any of us, or not very many of us, pick up a 900-page novel and, anticipate being enthralled for all 900 pages, even though that does happen. And then, that is a challenge, and that is a larger chunk of time. But it doesn't really make any difference to me. I will say I prefer books that are somewhere between 250 and 500 pages. That is, for me, a slow reader. If I read steadily, I promise Ike's okay. If I read steadily, that's about 1 week's worth of reading. So that's what I prefer. And then prompt number 9. Prompt number 9 is, which format do you like best? And I'm going to say paper. I like books as physical objects. I'm one of those people who likes to hold the book, and the shape of the book matters, and I care about the font and the line spacing, and I have preferences for deckled edges or no deckled edges, and so I'm a print book person. I do listen to books on audio occasionally, oftentimes really long classics. Like for Victober, I'm thinking of listening to Middlemarch as an audiobook, but I'm worried that I won't get all the beauty and the nuance if I'm listening to it instead of reading it. But I'm thinking about that. Eventually I will have to switch to an e-reader. I thought about getting one for my birthday this year because with my eyesight I'm going to need to be able to control the font size soon. So then the last question, prompt 10, is what are you currently reading? These are books I went over on Saturday, but I'm buddy reading Scar Lover by Harry Crews. I'm buddy reading this with Alan from Big Heart Books and Classics. I noticed he posted a video about this yesterday, I believe. I'll leave a link to his video down below. I'm involved in 2 Voxer group reads. One is reading the autobiography of Malcolm X as told by Alex Haley, and our Voxer discussions have been excellent. And then as part of the year-long Toni Morrison read-along, I am up to reading her novel Love, which I have to tell you I'm right about halfway through, and I really like this. I'm not sure I understand exactly what its intent is or what it's trying to show me yet, but I really am enjoying the reading experience. So those are the books I'm reading. I'm going to tag 3 people. I don't always tag people, but I'm going to tag 3 new channels, 2 of which I shouted out on Saturday, and 1 channel which Jason from Byways and Bookland shouted out, but nothing, kind of gets you started, I think, as a booktuber, like getting tagged. So I'm going to tag Emma from the Overstuffed Shelf, who I shouted out on Saturday. I want to tag Kayla from Spontaneous Reader. Also, I tagged her on Saturday. All right, I shouted out her channel on Saturday. And then Tripp. Tripp has been a long-time commenter on my channel and many other people's, and he just started filming videos. I believe he's had a 2nd video up today. And so I think his channel is called Tripp Reads. I'll leave a link to all 3 of those channels down below, as well as I think to the other channels I mentioned. As always, look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and thank you for watching.